Hello everyone, and thank you for joining my talk. This topic is sure to be interesting, especially if you are a purple martin landlord or you manage nests. The name of the talk is Microbe Mayhem, the effects of using Carbaryl on the microbiome of purple martins. My name is Stephanie Gaspar, and this month I will begin my master's program at the University of Central Florida. I will be starting in Dr. Anna Forsman's Wild Symbiosis Lab. Before I begin, I would like to give a little bit of a background of my research interests. And so as an undergrad, I began in the aquatic biogeochemistry lab under Dr. Lisa Chambers. And so what was really fun is we were involved with soil science research, and we would go to all different wetlands, such as the Orlando Wetlands Park, the Indian River Lagoon, where we were involved in oyster mat restoration, Lake Tohope-Caliga in Kissimmee, and even on the UCF campus there are many natural wetlands. And so during my time there, I began to be interested in microbes that were in soil. So I eventually left the lab, but I still had microbes on my mind. And then during my final semester at UCF, before I graduated, I joined Dr. Forsman's lab. She was just getting the UCF Purple Martin project up and running, and I was happy to help. During the 2021 field season, I went every weekend for nest checks, and I would monitor the amount of eggs, chicks, when the chicks hatched, and then at the end of the season in May, we had the UCF Purple Palooza event, where I learned how to properly handle birds, band them, measure them, and ultimately take blood samples. While I was helping Dr. Forsman, she started a research topic investigating their diets. As you may all know, we know that they're insectivorous, but we were not sure exactly what they were eating. And so some of us has seen them eat dragonflies and other insects, but we were able to collaborate with researchers from Manitoba, Erie, and Orlando, and we were able to characterize their diet right down to the species level. And so the method that we used was through their fecal samples. They were quite easy to capture, and then in this bottom picture we extracted the DNA and analyzed it. Some of the interesting things we found were in Florida, for example, there were the invasive red fire ant, crane flies. There were some mosquitoes in there. We even found ticks and many other bugs, ground beetles, and such. And so I would do a lot of processing of the fecal samples in the lab. And while I was doing that, and I was quite surprised at the information that a fecal sample can have. And so I started to wonder which microorganisms are present in the gut microbiome. As you all may know, collecting fecal samples from chicks is quite easy. Anytime you pick them up, if you have a Kim wipe or a clean vial at the ready, you can capture a clean sample. And so that is what we did in the diet study. And then I started thinking for my own research, what can I do with all of this poop? What is the bacteria that resides in their gut? And so I want to give you a little bit of background about the avian microbiome. Just like humans, it's essential for our health and well-being, and beneficial bacteria provides protection against pathogens. So when it comes to birds, think of E. coli or Salmonella. It helps boost their immune system. It helps protect their preen oil. So if you may not realize, they all have a gland on their backs, and this gland produces preen oil, which they use for glossy feathers and protection. But there is a beneficial bacteria that resides in that gland and is necessary for healthy plumage. As for the agricultural poultry industry, they found that when chickens and turkeys have a healthy microbiome, they convert feed into body mass, they have thicker shells, and it helps influence egg production. When it comes to their gut microbiome, I was quite surprised to see how long their digestive system is, and they have very specific bacteria that live in different portions of this organ. And so when it comes to the gut microbiome, research has shown that it does modulate their immune function, their fitness, certain behavior traits, but it also aids in digestion. And so all birds have a variety of diets, whether they're insectivores or they eat berries and nuts or carnivores. And it also helps with nutritional uptake. Maybe they have a poor diet like Hoatzins that only eat leaves. So that gut microbiome is essential for nutrient extraction and detoxification if they are eating something like, think of a vulture, for example, the type of foods they're eating. So the gut microbiome is essential for bird health. And research has shown that it is dominated by 4 phyla, which you could see below. All of them have different benefits as well. As I was working in the field season, each week going, I started to think about factors that could influence their microbiome. As we know, because they're migratory birds, they do experience a lot of stress. They have a variety of diet, whether they are wintering in South America or during their breeding season. And when it comes to the breeding season, what type of materials are in the nest, and how often are parents cleaning the nest? Additionally, chicks and adults can be exposed to chemicals such as pesticides, and there can be many parasites in the nest and on the birds as well. And so I discovered that nestlings at all life stages are exposed to carbaryls when they are eggs and up to when they fledge and leave the nest. And so I really was interested to know, does Carbaryl change the composition of the gut microbiome? And I'll get into that in a few more slides as to why are purple martins exposed to Carbaryl. Well, many of you may have already seen they have tons of fleas and mites and lice. Some nests are more infested than others, and some are actually beneficial while others may cause harm. Anyone that has handled an infestation knows when you take the bird out, in seconds you are covered with these blood-sucking mites, and it's quite disturbing to see so many, get them on you. And so then you could imagine what the bird feels like when they are covered in these mites. So I began to ask myself, are ectoparasites beneficial? Well, studies have shown some mites are actually non-parasitic scavengers. They will live in the nesting material and feed on detritus. There are also beneficial feather mites. They help control fungi and bacterial levels, while other feather mites cause damage to their plumage. And additionally, when it comes to the blood-sucking mites, those are the ones that can quickly crawl on you. They can contribute to anemia, low iron levels. They can spread disease, and they can contribute to a smaller body size in chicks. So for example, during this field season, we noticed that some of the nests that were infested, the chicks did have lower body size and weight, and their blood was more of a milky pink color instead of red like we would expect. And so I could understand why many people are concerned with the presence of so many pests. And so one common and popular treatment method is to use Carbaryl. And Carbaryl is in the carbamate family of pesticides and is one of the most popular ones in the United States. It is sold under the brand name Sevin, and it can be found in your local home and garden store. Interestingly, it was banned in California and the EU. I didn't realize until I started looking further into it, but it also acts as an acetylcholine esterase enzyme inhibitor, which is also known to have direct toxicological effects. And I'll go into that further on the next slide. And so anyone could pick up a bottle if you have some and read the warning label and discover for yourself that it is very dangerous for mammals, also fish. And so I became quite concerned when I knew this is a common management strategy. So research has shown with Carbaryl exposure in broiler chicks that they have muscle weakness, difficulty walking, such as abnormal gait. They literally cannot walk normally. They may have dizziness and collapse, and they've also been found to have reduced activity, where they are not acting their normal selves. They're less aggressive. And chickens on a farm in Italy were found to have Carbaryl in all of their organs, and higher amounts in their skin, fat, and muscles. So this is concerning for people that like to eat chicken, that you're getting a small dose anytime you're having chicken dinner. Japanese quail were found to have enlarged liver and kidneys, which is thought to be related to detoxifying Carbaryl. And importantly, migratory insectivorous birds were found with higher concentrations of the acetylcholine esterase than resident birds, which means somewhere along their migratory route they were exposed to Carbaryl. This is concerning because this may affect their migratory patterns. So taking all of this into consideration helped me design my experiment. Last year and this year, we were located at the University of Central Florida, right on campus. There are 6 sites, 14 houses, and 168 gourds. At the beginning of the season, before any of the adults arrive, every other gourd is treated with Sevin. And so we have plenty of control and treated nests. And Sevin is never added when nestlings or adults are present. It's just a one-time deal at the beginning. At the end of the season, usually in May, we will have the UCF Purple Palooza, and this is where we can get cloacal samples from adults. And so the adults could be nesting, they could also be incubating. We're not quite sure. It really depends on what gourd they're in. But with chicks, they must be 19 days old, and we can collect a clean fecal sample quite easily, as I've told you before. After that, we will bring the samples to the lab for further analysis. Once we bring the swabs and fecal samples to the lab, I will be able to extract the DNA and analyze them. And so my main research question is, will the microbiome differ between treated versus controlled nests? Research has shown that brown-headed cowbirds had proteobacteria dominating their gut microbiome. They were not doing a comparison study, but that is just the type of bacteria they normally have. And so I'm quite interested to know, does Carbaryl influence their gut composition? I want to give a special thanks to the Purple Martin Conservation Association for awarding me a grant that will help me get supplies for extractions. I have good news. This month I start my MS program, and because I participated in the field season last year and this year, I have tons of samples ready to go. And so I will be extracting DNA, running PCR, and then analyzing the results. And so I'm really excited to share with you my findings, and when that occurs, I will be the first to let you know. So one thing that's important to think about are the conservation implications. Why is this important for purple martins? Well, we all know they're a migratory species, and so anything that happens to them, whether they are wintering or breeding, will affect their fitness, their reproduction. And so we know chicks have Carbaryl exposure airborne and through the skin, all in their early life stages. And so Carbaryl may have unintended consequences. I'm especially interested in their microbial community, but many of you may be using Carbaryl and not noticed any effects, but one thing to take into consideration is that some of these effects may not become obvious until after they fledge. And so they're hard to observe after they leave the nest and what happens in that time period from when they fledge and have their first migration back to South America. I want to give a special thanks to Dr. Anna Forsman, Joe Segrist, and Dr. Jason Fisher. I want to thank the Purple Martin Conservation Association for inviting me to this conference and presenting my research project. And as soon as I have results, I am happy to share it with all of you. And now, if you have any questions, I am happy to answer them for you. Thank you for listening to my talk.
Thanks so much, Stephanie.
Hi, how are you?
Good, good. Thank you. Really important research that you're doing. I mean, this is a question that we need to know the answer for, right? Uh,
Absolutely.
all right. Let me see here. We got a couple of questions already. Babette says, so does using something like Sevin dust and changing nesting material take away the beneficial mites parasites, the beneficial ones?
Well, it's a possibility because there are some mites that are predatory mites, and so they will go after the like the parasitic ones, and so you could be reducing their populations. But studies have shown that there really is no great reduction in mites, even if you're doing nest changings.
Um, I know I've got a little behind the scenes info, but could you speak to anything different about, I don't know if we want to say this yet or not, the types of mites that were being found in one treatment versus the other?
Yes.
You know what I'm saying?
Yes, there is one particular mite species that is common with purple martins, and we see them um, amongst all nests. But interestingly, there was a species found in the treated nests that were not in the controlled nests. So it seems like for some reason, we don't know why, but we're only finding them in the treated nests with Carbaryl. And this one is not a purple martin specific mite. So that is worrisome because this is more of a general mite. I don't know the exact species type though. So it makes me think too, what about bacteria? Will there be different types of bacteria in the control or treated nests, mites and insects? So this is something that we could really investigate further and hopefully tease that apart.
Good job holding some of it close because I know it's not quite ready for prime time, and it's important to note that this is just starting. We don't really have
Yes,
uh, uh, full results yet, but to come, I'm sure. Jim
absolutely.
Ray mentions that when he led a GPS deployment here in the PMCA, he was impressed with the number of fleas on adult purple martins here. Yeah, that's there's a huge difference in the variation in nest parasites across the
Mhm.
different ranges. Stephanie, are you planning to look at other areas for this study, or are we sticking close to Florida for now?
For now, Florida, but I would love to know with other locations. And I believe we might have some fecal samples left over from the diet study from Erie and Manitoba. So I'll
Mhm.
talk to Dr. Forsman about that if that's viable. But hey, maybe you can collect some fresh poop and send it down to me.
We got a freezer full. Um,
Awesome.
all right, Mike Bishop says that he was told that Carbaryl is being discontinued soon in the manufacture of Sevin in the U.S. I know, yeah, there is some Sevin on the market that is a pyrethrin rather than
Mhm.
a
Like
carbamate.
carbamate. Hmm.
Do you know anything about the further about that, Stephanie?
I didn't know that they were discontinuing it, but that's interesting. Um,
Yeah.
I've been really going deep into the mechanism of action of how exactly the Carbaryl works. And I don't know if I have time here to share with everyone, but it's really crazy how it works and concerning actually, because think about like a human that has Parkinson's, those tremors. That's like a similar thing that's happening to insects and in those chicken studies as well. So when they have that buildup of that acetylcholine esterase, uh, they're going to have like it's actually sodium going into the nerve impulses and uncontrollably, and they're just going to have tremors, muscle weakness, difficulty walking. So we are seeing this in birds. So I am assuming that it could have long-term effects that we just really haven't noticed yet.
Yeah, potential is there. And just to be clear, I don't know that they're discontinuing Carbaryl,
Mm.
or if they just have two different options on the table,
Uh,
or maybe that one is just for California, that where they have banned Carbaryl.
that's true.
Um,
Definitely worth looking into further.
mhm. Lori says, a very important research. Thank you for raising awareness about Carbaryl. Brent, with a good question here. Did you say that Sevin is applied in nests before the birds arrive? How much and how do
Yes.
you apply it?
Yes. So it is usually in the end of January, early February, before the adults arrive. And so remember, in Florida, they get here earlier in the season. And so we clean out the nests, scrub them clean. We put the fresh pine straw in it. And then every other gourd is treated with the 1 teaspoon of Sevin, but it's shooken around and then left there. We never add it again once adults arrive, especially when chicks or eggs or anything. So it's just a one-time application in the beginning. And so it's just every other gourd is treated like this.
Um, so many great questions here. We're never going to get to all of them. Just scrolling real quick. Maybe for Joe, how widespread is insecticide treatment of nests in artificial housing? Uh, we have some data on that, but I don't know if it's trustworthy because some folks, play pretty close to the vest on whether they tell other folks that they're doing it or not.
Mm-hmm.
It's at least in online circles, it seems to be, a significant number of people that are doing it, and it's possible that they're just more vocal. What is it, the 80-20 rule? But yeah, so many great questions. You're going to be busy here in chat
Great.
answering these. So, okay.
I also want to say real quick, I can understand why people get scared seeing all of these parasites because the first time I handled a purple martin, I really never experienced that before, having those mites crawl down my arm. And so it's concerning, and especially if there's flies or even sometimes bed bugs and are these other little insects, it could affect the health of the chicks. So I know people have the best intentions. And so I understand why people are looking for some management technique or methods.
Yeah, a really important study. I'm excited to have you on it. I know there's so many other things behind the scenes, preliminary results that we're just chomping at the bit to say, but it would
Yes.
be irresponsible to spill too much beans already. But know that as soon as we have results, they'll be published and shared through the PMCA sources as
Absolutely.
possible. All right.
Well,
Thanks so
thank
much
you.
again, Stephanie. And sorry that I put you in a PhD program when you're only in a master's. No pressure. You're not going to have to go to school for an extra couple of years. I promise. Not unless you want to.
Hopefully I do.
All right. Thank you so much.